Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm Saladino.
Now listen up. It's judgment time. We're starving dogs running the rail lines.
Shout out to Endymion TV. So he did this video a couple of days ago. Street baby defenders exposed as insiders tell all. Plus woke PlayStation activists panic as future burns. So he says, an insider has told me about the From Software buyout, Sony Japan's future, and Sony America's fears. That's the thing I really want to get into. So,
hey everyone, it's Endymion, and in this video, I got you a lot of insider scoops when it comes to Sony PlayStation right now. From the whole Sony wants to buy Elden Ring developer From Software and why that's happening, Naughty Dog being a bully allegedly behind the scenes to other dev studios.
It's the Naughty Dog stuff and the Sony America stuff that I really want to talk about, because I've been saying in other videos how Naughty Dog in particular has had a terrible effect on the Western gaming industry. And it's mainly down to Neil Druckmann, but let's continue.
So one of my most trusted sources has gotten me a lot here. This is the same source I have for CD Projekt Red, Dune Awakening, Assassin's Creed, and more. They talked to someone who works at Sony in a relatively high position within the company who just spilled the beans to them because they want the public to know what's happening. And the way my source told me this entire scoop and all this information should be basically titled A Civil War between Sony Japan and America. Okay, let's get into it.
So Endymion has been really killing it lately with the insiders. And I have to say, I believe his sources. I believe him when he talks about these sources, and I believe the sources. And I guess if you're a stupid activist or some random asshole online who hates gamers and just trolls YouTuber comment sections to own the chuds, you'd call it confirmation bias. But no, it just stands to reason that not everyone at these studios or publishing companies are down with these woke sociopaths and their DEI bullshit, and that there would be people there, even people in high up positions, who want people to know that we're not crazy, that, us YouTubers, us gamers who talk about this stuff, we're not crazy. That this shit really is happening behind the scenes. It's almost like a cry for help.
Oh God, help. Oh my God, Emma gets into the pneumonia, it'll neutralize the venom.
By the way, I should say that a lot of these problems have to do with Sony Japan versus Sony America, but I'll get into that in a bit. From what I'm told by my source, the reason why Sony Japan wants to own Kadokawa and From Software is because they are extremely frustrated by the constant underperformances of their Western-led projects. We're talking things like God of War, The Last of Us, and of course Concord being a big thorn in their side right now and how that all went down.
I mean, you got into gaming to make games and to blow players' minds with cool gameplay and cool characters and hot women and so on. But now the whole thing has been overturned and overrun by a bunch of gender-obsessed weirdos with pronouns in their bios who want to make games that have arachnophobia filters and with deliberately ugly, trans-friendly, lesbian black women as the man-hating protagonist. And you see this shit is failing at an alarming rate. And you see that the people pushing this stuff are doubling and tripling down because for them, games aren't about the player. Games are about the people who don't play games, but who sit online all day looking for something to be politically offended over. And if anyone tries to speak out and be like, hey, I don't think gamers are going to like this, you just get shouted down and told that gamers are bigots and that we don't need them. You don't need your actual audience. You don't need your actual customer base. Insane.
Sony Japan is very angry that what used to be a promising Western push by their teams over in Sony America, that they're no longer making the big hits that they were accustomed to having before.
And like I've been saying for a while now, it's because of Neil Druckmann. Druckmann and his booty buddy Herman Hulst. Those two idiots are the driving force behind all of this. And yeah, if you look back even further, Anita Sarkeesian. So it's feminism. Feminism is the cause of all of this. Women who don't belong in this space, invading the space to change it, not because they really care about it, but because they don't want men to have it. And again, Druckmann and that clown Herman Hulst, they're the ones who've implemented a lot of this stuff.
And Sony, from what I'm told, wants to completely change their outlook going forward when it comes to how they make their games and who they are making those games for. They want to be seen as a Japanese first developer, creating experiences more in line with what they used to be known for as opposed to now.
And that's the thing. Gaming isn't about representation or blue-haired weirdos who think that they're neither men or women needing to see themselves. Gaming is about games and playing and enjoying the games developers want to make. And if that happens to include black lesbian leads, fine. Most gamers won't buy it. But if you want to make a game like that, I say go for it. But what DEI and woke does, what this ideology does, is demand and insist and pressure and force all developers to make all games star ugly, black, trans-friendly lesbian leads. Like I keep saying, I don't have a problem with Dustborn existing alongside Stellar Blade. But activists don't want Stellar Blade to exist at all. They want all games to be Dustborn. Doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. If you're into games from Japan, then you want those games to be Japanese. You don't want them watered down and westernized and edited for a
modern audience.
You want Japanese games to be Japanese, not look and sound like they were made in downtown LA. Girl in hijab just by herself wandering around town, talking to people, no big deal. She's in the crowd of people who attend the mayor announcing that he and this evil land developer have agreed to build a luxury hotel over this nature reserve. What's funny is that it's like, okay, so all these different people are there. They're the actual citizens of the island. And like I said, it's this Muslim girl, this Chinese dude. I think there's like a Japanese girl. And it's like, I want to go to a Mediterranean island, a Spanish island full of, Spanish people. I don't want to go to downtown LA and see this smorgasbord of, different cultures all jammed into one. I want something different. Make Japan great again.
Also, I got information on why you haven't seen a remaster for Bloodborne either too. So this, as I'm told, is not Sony Japan's fault, but actually Sony America's. Like I said, Sony Japan wants to revert PlayStation back to its heritage, but Sony America wants to maintain what has been happening there more recently. Stuff like the Horizon remaster and Last of Us Part 1 remake, those are decisions that have been primarily made by Sony America, who sees those sorts of games as PlayStation's future. They want to continue to foster these sorts of games over what Sony Japan wants to prioritize, which is more From Software-esque experiences, if you will. As I'm told, Sony America is actually responsible for why you haven't seen a Bloodborne remaster, because Sony America sees Bloodborne, despite the huge demand for it, as a niche title. And they don't see that game and what it represents as what they want to push as the future of PlayStation. Yes, I know this is stupid of them and insane. Don't shoot the messenger, okay? I'm just telling you what I was told. They don't see Bloodborne as important, and it's why Sony America pushes instead for remasters of Horizon Zero Dawn instead.
It's not that Sony America, and I really do think this is down to Druckmann and Herman Hulse. It's not that Sony America looks at Bloodborne and thinks, well, this isn't important enough, that this is just a niche title. I think what it is that they know that Bloodborne is very popular with gamers. It's not that it's not important enough, it's that it is important. But this goes back to what I keep saying, how activists don't want you to have choice. It's why all the characters in Concord are so hideous, and even though you have a variety of them, none of them were made to look sexy or cool, because everybody at that studio knew that they made actually traditionally attractive and cool-looking badass characters. They know everybody, including the so-called marginalized people they claim to be speaking for, would choose the hot characters, and they don't want that. They don't want you to have choice. They don't want you to have choice. They don't want you to have alternatives to the shit they keep pushing. That's why they won't make a sequel to Days Gone, but we're going to get into that a little bit later.
They don't see Bloodborne as important, and it's why Sony America pushes instead for remasters of Horizon Zero Dawn instead. Which, by the way, apparently bombed and didn't do well, go figure. So did the Horizon Lego game, apparently that bombed on Steam as well.
Of course it failed. Stop trying to make Horizon a thing. It's not a thing anymore. It could have been. It should have been, but you fucked it up. You uglified Aloy, you turned her into a boring and dull lesbian. That's it. That's a wrap. Leave it to Sony to take a game about robot dinosaurs with a pretty, likable redhead with cool moves and weapons as the lead and make it box office poison. Idiots.
Fools.
but like my source told me, there is a genuine woke civil war of some kind at Sony right now between its two halves. The Sony Japan side want more Japanese studios in their wing, making more Japanese-centric content, while Sony America is resisting this and wants their future to be more DEI. So pretty much, Sony America is responsible for what is killing Sony. There's no other way to put it to you guys. They are the ones responsible for all the things you don't like. The female-led future games, the diversity being forced, pronouns, all of it.
Now, that's something that we all knew. We know that all this stuff comes down to the West and the idiot activists and the DEI initiatives and the localizers. Like, we knew before Sony shut down their Japan studio that this was about appealing to the West and the non-existent modern audience. That they were hiring feminists who were constantly censoring games from Japan that had even a hint of fan service, like how they censored DMC5 and so on.
This then brings us to what I'm being told is the first massive crack in Sony America's armor, which is Naughty Dog, the dev studio. You likely know Naughty Dog made Uncharted and The Last of Us, Jak and Daxter, etc. They were the golden goose in terms of Sony America's power and leverage. Because whenever Sony Japan said, "Why are we doing this?" Naughty Dog would deliver up something that would break the barriers and ceiling in terms of sales and reception. And Naughty Dog is responsible for the massive Western push in terms of Sony America's ideology and future viewpoints, if you will.
Almost a year ago, I think it was December 19th, I put out this video, Downward Facing Naughty Dog. Was seeing how much power and influence Naughty Dog has and the way that Druckmann uses it. He does this weird passive-aggressive thing. It's hard to nail down. He's like one of the perfect cancel pigs. He uses an aura of art and pretension to act like what he's doing is morally good. That being an artist is more important than being a game director. And that games as art is so fundamentally intrinsic and important to the health of the gaming industry. So he's like, we don't make games that are meant to be fun, which is absurd. People play games because they are fun. You can have different levels of connections with these different properties, but they should be fun. There should be a reason why you go to it and want to come back to it. I believe the entire kind of, I hate to say aura, but there's this negative energy that is treated like it's positive around Druckmann and Naughty Dog. But they've had a terrible effect on the industry, especially if you just look at the Sony's first-party studios.
But this first massive crack in the armor was actually Last of Us Part 2. As my sources person at Sony told them, The Last of Us Part 2 fell well behind on expectations for Sony financially. The original game sold around 17 million copies on PS3, which was then boosted by the PS4 remaster. Sony America hyped up Part 2 to do even better given how large PS4's player base was by 2020, and initial sales were strong, but ultimately Part 2 sold about 10 million, which is about a 40% drop compared to Part 1.
I dare them to make Last of Us Part 3. You know, they could say what they want about Last of Us Part 2 being a huge success. I don't believe it. There's no way you could tell me that that was truly a success for them.
And then Sony Japan used Ghost of Tsushima as the sort of game that perfectly represented what Sony should be doing instead. Since it was made by a Western studio, Sucker Punch in this case, but was obviously a Japanese love letter to their history and culture. By the way, Sony Japan made note to say that Tsushima sold around 13 million copies, which is around 3 million more than Last of Us 2 with far less promotion and budget too.
God! What did it do?
Then another big crack in Sony America's armor happened, which was Spider-Man 2. It sold around 10 million so far, which compared to Spider-Man 2018 was about 69%, nice, less sales than the previous game. Spider-Man 2018 sits currently at around 33 million copies sold so far. God of War Ragnarok was also another big crack in the armor for Sony America too. Ragnarok as of now apparently has sold about 15 million copies compared to God of War 2018, which sold around 23 million copies. Another massive blunder and bust for Sony actually was also Horizon Forbidden West. which according to this source has sold only around 8 million copies, compared to Zero Dawn, which originally pushed around 20 million, so less than 50% compared to the first one there as well.
But they've had a terrible effect on the industry, especially if you just look at the Sony's first-party studios. You look at what God of War became in the Santa Monica when they did the reboot. The first game, I think, was great. There was already signs of it, though, there. And it's even worse in Ragnarok, which is one of the worst AAA games I've ever played, alongside Last of Us Part 2. In a lot of ways, there's character assassination going on in that game. Kratos acts like Atreus' mom. He's a god of war, but he's constantly crying and whining about protecting Atreus and not wanting him to get mixed up in Ragnarok. And it doesn't make sense, but whatever. So God of War is affected by Naughty Dog. Horizon Forbidden West. They uglified her. They uglified everybody else in the game. They made her boring and dull and unappealing. I'm talking about Aloy. Insomniac. Spider-Man 2. And I'm going to get into this soon in other videos, but 2 more videos, I think. Spider-Man 2 is Naughty Dog's legacy. It's a terrible game. And the message in it and the way in which things are done, how they take the main character and they shit on him in favor of the woman and the little black kid and all this stuff. It's very pernicious. And that's had a terrible effect on sales.
But in terms of Last of Us 1 with Joel, Spider-Man 2018 with a real heroic Peter Parker, and God of War 2018 being a very male-centric game and not making Kratos into a whiny baby and so on, the sequels did not do enough in comparison. This then brings us to another game I love called Days Gone, as I'm told Sony barely marketed this game as they had little faith in it. And yet even then, it sold 7 million copies right out of the gate and costed significantly less than their other first-party titles. As of right now, it's claimed by this insider source that Days Gone has actually outsold Last of Us 2. But Sony won't reveal this, because this then leads into another big scoop. Allegedly, one of the major reasons why Days Gone sequel was cancelled was because reviewers obviously didn't like the white male protagonist. But the other major reason was that Naughty Dog saw Days Gone as a threat to their Last of Us franchise, and that Naughty Dog used their leverage as the Western golden goose, so to speak, to strong-arm Sony America into not developing a sequel, because they didn't want another zombie third-person first-party game to compete with them, especially since Days Gone sold well with way less marketing push compared to Last of Us Part 2. Could it be jealousy? Apparently, yeah. Instead, as I'm told, Ben's studio, which made Days Gone, was actually redirected to assist with the now cancelled Last of Us multiplayer project, which instead is kind of a weird twist of irony if you look at it. So in this at least, we now have a clearer picture of Sony America's failures.
But again, just look at the effect Naughty Dog's whole persona and attitude has had on Santa Monica and Guerrilla Games and Insomniac. They essentially destroyed Ben Studios because it's ridiculous. You look at Days Gone. Days Gone did well, and it was well regarded by anyone who actually played the game. And for them to just cancel it instead of saying, okay, we're going to build on this success, just build on this new series. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if Druckmann didn't go to Sony and be like, well, we already have an Apocalypse franchise. Days Gone is too similar to The Last of Us. I mean, hell, Deacon's wife is even named Sarah. So it'd probably be better if we use these talented people to help us. We've lost a lot of people. Maybe we can bring them and make them a part of Naughty Dog now. I wouldn't be surprised if he did something like that. I'm basically just saying Ben Studios has been reduced to Naughty Dog's pack mules at this point. And I just think it's funny overall. Again, Naughty Dog has had a terrible effect on Sony and their first-party studios.
I told you, motherfucker.
So yeah, none of this is actually a surprise to me, the things that Endymion talks about in his video. It just confirms, though, that this attitude that activists and journos have, where they circle the wagons and they say to gamers that, oh, you're just clickbaiting and rage baiting and you're just making things up, like you don't understand what's really happening in the industry. That's the whole thing about Sweet Baby Inc. is not doing what you think they're doing. We know what they're doing. Like, if you're a gamer in particular, if you're used to paying attention to patterns, that you're being trained to kind of be aware of your surroundings in a way, you're going to, and especially if you're a geek and a nerd or whatever, you're going to do a deep dive into things you care about. And you're going to try to figure it out and solve puzzles. Not these easy puzzles that are in Dragon Age, the Veilguard, apparently, but you're going to notice things. You're going to pay attention to things. So this stuff I said pretty much a year ago, or maybe more, where I've been saying it over and over again, that the reason why Days Gone wasn't put out as the sequel because it is a rival to The Last of Us. And it's so funny to me that I never would have thought, as much as I love the first game, Last of Us, I never would have thought that Days Gone would have been better than The Last of Us Part 2. So despite all the great technical achievements of Last of Us Part 2, it doesn't hold a candle, really, to Days Gone as far as a great experience. There's great gameplay in The Last of Us as far as the action and stuff goes, but it doesn't hold a candle to Days Gone, and they know that. And I wish I could find the video. I've talked about this so much that I've talked about it in videos that don't have really anything to do with Naughty Dog in particular, although I think a lot of this really does come down to, a lot of the stuff in the West, this activist stuff, comes down to all the accolades, all the power that Naughty Dog has had for years, particularly through Neil Druckmann and the way he's behaved, that a lot of it is his fault. But I wish I could find that clip, and I guess I could just redo it here, but it was a moment where I was talking about how I knew this. I knew that Druckmann is the reason why Days Gone, it doesn't have a sequel. And I feel like he was like, why do you need Days Gone when you already have The Last of Us 2? Why do you need them when you have me? So, yeah, I mean, I think this is a really, great video from Endymion. I'll put the link in the description box below. I think it goes without saying, this guy, he gets like 50,000 views within the first half hour. So I don't really have to big up him. I feel like if you know who you are, you don't need people to be, yeah, please watch Endymion's video. It's great. I use clips of it here. Whatever, But it is a really good video. And it was cool to sort of talk about the stuff that his insider told him. Because the stuff I've been talking about now for forever.
We're breaking the law, breaking the world together, throwing out all tenderness. We're breaking the rules.